Talk about a total disaster. Donald Trump's chief spokesperson, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, became visibly flustered and defensive during today's press briefing, in which she sparred with reporters about Trump's various legal defeats, the lack of accountability, oversight, and disclosure related to Elon Musk, and even Trump's petty decision to censor the Associated Press. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to talk about in this video. Karoline Leavitt is kind of the culmination of the MAGA press secretary. We saw Sean Spicer during the Trump administration, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Kayleigh McEnany, the latter of whom joined Fox News. Sarah Huckabee Sanders went on to become governor, I think, of Arkansas, Arkansas, I believe. Karoline Leavitt is kind of like the culmination of that formula. She's young, she's combative, she's agile, she attacks the press. But unfortunately for her, she's finding herself in the same position that so many very clever MAGA people do, which is that when the facts are so opposed to you, you struggle in the face of critical questions in the critical press. And we see this. Watch her become visibly defensive and flustered as she spars with the media. She tries to turn the tables. We're going to play these clips and unpack them together, starting with this one about the constitutional crisis that Trump has triggered.
Now, before I take questions, I would like to address an extremely dishonest narrative that we've seen emerging over the past few days. Many outlets in this room have been fear-mongering the American people into believing there is a constitutional crisis taking place here at the White House. I've been hearing those words a lot lately. But in fact, the real constitutional crisis is taking place within our judicial branch, where district court judges in liberal districts across the country are abusing their power to unilaterally block President Trump's basic executive authority. We believe these judges are acting as judicial activists rather than honest arbiters of the law. And they have issued at least 12 injunctions against this administration in the past 14 days, often without citing any evidence or grounds for their lawsuits. This is part of a larger concerted effort by Democrat activists and nothing more than the continuation of the weaponization of justice against President Trump.
So right out the gate, there are a couple of problems with this. Again, she's a prolific liar, much like Donald Trump. I will remind you, this is kind of a follow-up to a video we did earlier today, that many of the judges who have smacked Trump down in court are conservative. Again, as Abby Phillip of CNN pointed out, one was a George W. Bush appointee, a Ronald Reagan appointee, a Donald Trump appointee, another Ronald Reagan appointee, another George W. Bush appointee. So many of these were conservative judges appointed by conservative presidents, including Trump himself. So she's lying when she says it's liberal activists, liberal districts, liberal judges, totally full of shit. And again, note that even though Donald Trump won the election, he's now the most powerful man in the world, at least on paper. He has Republican majorities in both chambers of Congress, a sympathetic Supreme Court. He's still the victim. They can't help but position themselves as victims because they are the ultimate snowflakes. They love to dish it out. They can't take it in turn. Quit picking on the most powerful man in the world and, all of his unified control of government. Stop it. Pathetic. We'll continue.
Doge and the fraud claims. Elon Musk in the Oval yesterday gave us some information on that. We're just wondering if there's some proof, evidence. Is the White House willing to share evidence of those fraud claims, or can Elon Musk come to the briefing room and share material evidence of what he's talking about?
Sure. I would love for Elon Musk to come to the briefing room. That's why we had him go to the Oval Office yesterday, where I think he provided great answers. He was speaking in layman's terms, speaking common sense to all of you in the media, but also to Americans at home. But I would say especially to all of you in the media, because I think it's a real fallacy that there's this alleged lack of transparency when it comes to Doge. President Trump and Elon Musk have been incredibly transparent on what Doge is doing. There is an X account with the Doge handle. They are tweeting out what they are doing on a daily basis. They have a website where they are posting the receipts of the contracts that they are reviewing and the payments that they have stopped from going out the door. The secretaries of our departments have stopped. Doge.
So, as we discussed in yesterday's video about that Oval Office meeting, which only further served to make Trump look visibly annoyed and visibly emasculated, as Elon Musk towered over him and commanded the room very awkwardly. The fact of the matter is, Elon Musk providing screenshots of shit on social media is ridiculous. They would never have accepted the Biden administration just posting screenshots of shit on Facebook or social media and say, hey, here's your proof. Forget hearings, forget testimony under oath, forget subpoenas, forget actual paper disclosures to elected representatives, forget all of that. because we posted screenshots on social media. Well, you're the one choosing what you post on social media in terms of a screenshot. So how can we verify it? How can we substantiate it? How do we know that that's all you should be showing us? That's the point. That's the fallacy in question. Again, Karoline Leavitt saying, well, he's active on Twitter, don't worry about it, really isn't a comfort. Here's another clip.
And I would also say that before it was Elon Musk making our government efficient and accountable, it was some unnamed bureaucrat that none of you knew. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. He's also now one of the most highly scrutinized men in the world alongside President Trump because of what he's doing and the access that he is allowing.
So again, this just goes to show, unfortunately, how very stupid the Trump administration's position currently is. Well, before it was an unnamed bureaucrat. No unnamed bureaucrat had this level of power and control over the White House. It's just simply not true. Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, which already makes him exceptionally powerful. He's privatized and owns X, Twitter, one of the biggest social media platforms in the world. That doubles his power. And now he is a top advisor to Donald Trump. He has bullied his way into the heart of American politics. He has threatened to primary and to financially punish elected representatives who defy Trump. And again, we've seen report after report after report where even key Trump advisors are worried about the lack of accountability and Trump's lack of leverage over him. So yes, this makes Elon Musk uniquely dangerous, uniquely risky, to say nothing of the fact that on top of all of that power, which no unnamed bureaucrat has ever had before, nothing close, there are also the conflicts of interest. Elon Musk has moneyed interests tied up in the federal government, unlike any other unnamed bureaucrat that we have ever seen. He is subsidized heavily by taxpayer dollars in the form of government contracts. And when you put someone like that in charge of evaluating the worth of government contracts, you create a very obvious corrupt incentive and conflicts of interest. So again, everything she said is objectively false. She would always lose the debate on this issue. And that's why the polling on this issue is so disastrous for Trump and Elon Musk, because even an increasing number of conservatives are like, yeah, this seems sketchy as hell.
As for the actual receipts, we are happy to provide them, and I actually brought some today because all of you know I love to bring the receipts. We have contracts upon contracts that we can send and provide this information to you. Let me be very clear. We are not trying to hide anything. We have been incredibly transparent, and we will continue to be. These are screenshots of contracts that DOJ found across our government. This is a DEI contract, $36,000 for U.S. citizenship and immigration services. That is against the president's policies and his America First agenda. This is a $3.4 million contract, a Council for Inclusive Innovation at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, Department of Commerce, another DEI contract that DOJ identified. I can continue to go through these. Oh, I love this one.
Cool, you're printing off screenshots. They can access them online. We need the actual files, copies of the actual files to be sent to the public, to the press, to our elected representatives, and then you should have people who work for DOJ or work with DOJ, or ideally Elon Musk himself, testify before Congress as we expect. Remember, Congress exercises oversight duties. Biden administration officials testified under oath before members of Congress, be they Democratic members or Republican members. The Trump administration is obligated to do the same thing, at least for the sake of consistency. That's oversight, that's accountability, and you haven't given a shit. This idea that, well, there are things going on that are not in line with Trump's agenda. Okay, does that constitute fraud? Does that constitute abuse, especially if they're congressionally mandated? It's not up totally to Donald Trump to determine how federal dollars are assigned. Quite frankly, it's not supposed to be up to him at all, except through politics. It's Congress, not the executive, that funds and appropriates money. If Trump wants to exert influence over that, he can do so as the leader of his party and the leader of the party that controls majorities in Congress. But this idea that Congress provides the appropriations, provides the funds, and Donald Trump can simply give them the finger and do whatever the hell he wants is unconstitutional. And these same people would freak the hell out if a Democratic administration attempted to do the same. But again, they're ultimate hypocrites.
Happy to provide this information to you. We're talking about it every single day.
Are all those things you just mentioned fraud, or are they?
And by the way, did you catch how, again, visibly flustered she is? Like, how dare you ask for accountability and receipts and proof of my claims?
Happy to provide this information to you. We're talking about it every single day.
Are all those things you just mentioned fraud, or are they waste, or are they just contrary to the president's policies?
I would argue that all of these things are fraudulent, they are wasteful, and they are an abuse of the American taxpayer's dollar. This is not what the government should be spending money on. It's contrary to the president's priorities and agenda. And again, we can continue to provide you the receipts for all of the fraud, waste, and abuse. And if anybody in here wants to argue that the federal government is not fraudulent in some capacity, be my guest, because I think the American people watching at home would beg to differ.
Again, you can see it. She's so pissed. She's so flat-footed on this because she's just outmatched. The facts are against her. The polling is against her. The polls show that people are skeptical of Elon Musk and his influence over Trump and this entire project, and nobody is making the argument that there's no fraudulent activity in the government, that there's no waste in the government, that there's no abuse in the government. But waste, fraud, and abuse is not whatever Donald Trump doesn't like. That's where you dipshit cultists get it wrong every time. You actually have to prove that it's waste, fraud, and abuse. And to her twisted mind, to so many MAGA twisted minds, it's just whatever Donald Trump doesn't like. No. That's not how that works. And if it is how that works, then the next time a Democratic president's in the White House, then whatever they like is what goes, and you all should just shut up and get in line. But of course you won't. And you should, quite frankly. You have a right to oppose it. But we have a right to oppose it. And simply because it's what you want doesn't make what's contrary waste, fraud, and abuse. That's the whole point. But again, they can't function and they can't win when they're held to the same standard. That's the point. We'll continue.
You talked about the transparency with Doge and Elon Musk's press availability yesterday. There is a conflict of interest law in place that says that people who have personal interests can't interact with government entities that could touch on those. Has President Trump signed a waiver for Elon Musk? Does such a thing exist? If it does, will you guys release it in the interest of transparency that he's committed to?
I have not seen the law that you are referring to. What I can tell you is that Elon Musk, as I've confirmed before, is a special government employee. He is filing the proper financial disclosure, and he is complying with all applicable federal laws. As you also heard, Elon addressed this directly yesterday in the alleged conflict of interest, and he said everything he's doing is very public, and if you all perceive a conflict of interest, you're welcome to bring that up.
The Judiciary Committee. But I was placed in purgatory with Comer.
So ridiculous. So ridiculous that we're here. So the idea is, hey, listen, if you catch him doing something which looks like a conflict of interest, then sure, bring it up. But otherwise, we're not going to actually provide any sort of meaningful disclosure. That's pathetic. Again, she points out, like, where's the waiver to this? Like, where's the proof that there are checks against a conflict of interest, or at the very least, that Donald Trump has issued some sort of waiver, like, no, it doesn't matter what conflicts of interest exist, he gets a blank check. They won't even produce that. It's total bullshit. And I'll also point out that Elon Musk's financial disclosure that Karoline Leavitt is touting, it's not public. It's not public. As a special government employee, he is not legally required to make a public disclosure, which probably is bad, number one, in the first place. Number two, really bad when it's the richest man in the world who has unprecedented levels of corrupt incentive to be in the position that he's in. And number three, this confidential public disclosure, according to reporters, will be kept even from elected representatives. So Republican senators, Republican congresspeople, Democratic senators, Democratic congresspeople apparently won't be able to access this either. This is the exact opposite of accountability and oversight. And actually, I want to close with a separate thing. This is this part's a follow-up to a video that we did earlier today about Donald Trump's censorship, which apparently earned even the ire of a legendary Fox News host. Donald Trump kicked out the Associated Press because the Associated Press, in their estimation, didn't honor Donald Trump's arbitrary rename of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. And this is what Karoline Leavitt had to say when confronted about that.
That's an invitation that is given, and there are hundreds of outlets on this campus. Many of you in this room who don't have the privilege of being part of that pool every single day and getting to ask the president questions. We reserve the right to decide who gets to go into the Oval Office, and you all have credentials to be here, including the Associated Press, who is in this briefing room today.
But isn't it retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server, and Apple has recognized that, Google has recognized that, pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America, and it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the...
So again, there you have it. She's visibly flustered, visibly defensive, and open in the censorship. The Trump administration is attacking the free press, left, right, and center. We've detailed many examples. It's not all-inclusive, otherwise we'd be here all day. But they're boasting about it from the podium. And again, I want you to imagine the shoe being on the other foot. And instead of the Trump administration, it's the Biden administration. And instead of Karoline Leavitt, it's Karine Jean-Pierre or Jen Psaki saying that they kicked out Fox News because of X, Y, and Z reason. Right-wing media, centrist media, quite frankly, even the Associated Press, who was just kicked out by the Trump administration, would be rightly condemning that move. But because the MAGA movement is inherently hypocritical, they can't help but celebrate it. They have the power, and they love punishing the press. And this is why I said, whether we like it or not, the next Democratic administration is going to have to start playing some of these games too, by just making the point, don't go down this road, because we can play tit for tat as well, and you won't like it. So how about we both put the tit and the tat down? But the days of Democrats not responding in kind, at least somewhat, to Republicans should be well over. And I think that's the only way that you'll ever teach the MAGA movement and the Republican Party a lesson. So here we are, the Trump administration engaging in blatantly censorious acts for sheer pique and spite, and Karoline Leavitt struggling to answer honestly questions about Elon Musk, Trump's legal defeats, and acts of censorship. But she was chosen by Trump for her capacity to lie, so we shouldn't be surprised. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.